Like what we're doing here at Cube for Two? Hit that like and subscribe button to let us know. Alright guys, let's get started. What's good, Cubers? It's your boy Matt, and hey, why so sad? Pioneer got you down. Prices too high. That bulk smuggler's copter up to $10 and now you can't get one. Don't sweat it. Matt's got your back. Today we're going to talk about cubing on a budget. Some cool, awesome cube cards that should make it in nearly any cube that are all super budget friendly. So, without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to bring you a couple of cards from each color. Let's start with white and one of my favorite white aggro pieces, Knight of the Holy Nimbus. For double white, you get a human rebel knight with flanking. If the Knight of the Holy Nimbus would be destroyed, regenerate it. Pay 2, Knight of the Holy Nimbus can't be regenerated this turn. Any opponent may play this ability. Knight of the Holy Nimbus is dumb. It's so good. You can just swing him into your opponent with Abandon. Most of the time he doesn't trade because you're in the aggro deck and your opponent just tapped out to play their creature, so they can't afford to pay the tax on regeneration. Furthermore, Knight of the Holy Nimbus beats a lot of different cube board wipes. He doesn't beat the classics like Wrath of God because they say can't be regenerated. But most board wipes Knight of the Holy Nimbus will beat. He dodges all spot removal that doesn't exile. He's so good. How much do you think this mighty white aggro piece cost? 38 cents. That's right, 38 cents for your new best 2-drop. You're welcome. Speaking of 2-drops, let me introduce you to a fantastic 2-drop removal piece, and that's Winds of Abandon. For 1 and a white, you get to exile target creature you don't control. For each creature exiled this way, its controller searches their library for a basic land card. Those players put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library. It's fantastic. Most of the time, this is just a 2-mana exile something. They get a basic land. It's like a slightly expensive path to exile without the instant speed. But occasionally you get to overload it. And when you overload it and wipe their whole board, it does not matter that they went and fished a bunch of basic lands out of their deck because they don't have a board anymore. Winds of Abandon is fantastic early, it's fantastic late, it crushes Quadrant Theory. This card is fantastic. And did I mention it's $1.67? That's right, it's $1.67. By the way, all of our cards are under $2 today. So these are your 2 gems in white. You just spent some money, visit your favorite card vendor and purchase them. You're welcome. Moving on, let's go to blue. In blue, I want to look at one of my favorite 6-drops, Dream Eater. For 4 and double blue, you get a creature Nightmare Sphinx, flash, and flying. When Dream Eater enters the battlefield, surveil 4. When you do, you may return target non-land permanent and an opponent controls to its owner's hand. I love this card. Oh my gosh, I love this card. It's so good. Alright, Consecrated Sphinx and Torrential Gearhulk, he's not. But he's pretty much better than all the other creature 6-drops. Flash him in, eat something on blocks, bounce something else to your opponent's hand, and then you surveil 4, fixing your next couple of draws, or filling up your graveyard. I love Dream Eater. This card is so good. It's so spicy, and your opponent is never prepared for it. It's fantastic. And this is a mythic. This card must be stupid expensive, right? Nope. 72 cents. You're welcome. Now the next card I want to point out for Cube and for Blue has been a recent addition to my Cube, and it just does work. It's so good. Let me introduce you to Watcher for Tomorrow. For 1 and a blue, you get a creature human wizard with Hideaway, which means it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it does, you look at the top 4 cards of your library, exile 1 face down, put the rest on the bottom of your library. When he leaves the battlefield, put the exiled card into its owner's hand. If you follow me on Twitter, you might know that we had a draft recently and the Kiki Jiki deck won. That deck was stupid, and this was a huge part of it. Watcher of Tomorrow comes down, filters the top 4, put the card you want under him, exiled of course, and then you return it to your hand when he dies. Holy crap. Players were scared to attack because they didn't want the Kiki player to draw from Watcher for Tomorrow. They'd had combo pieces under him, and then players were scared to death of Watcher. So Watcher for Tomorrow was so good, and he serves as a road bump against aggro decks where you can play him down, untap him, and then use him to block, and then he replaces himself with the best card from the top of your library. So good. Watcher of Tomorrow has been excellent. You should pick one up, and it's wildly affordable because it's 21 cents. We're gonna get you out of blue for under $1. Under $1. You can't do that in blue. It's not possible. Well, it is the day, boys and girls. Now let's move on to black, shall we? I want to highlight one of my favorite additions to my cube, and it's been innocuous. It's a small card that you're probably not thinking about, but I added it over the summer, and the card has been fantastic, and that's Ransack the Lab. For 1 and a black, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest in your graveyard. I freaking love this card. If you're not playing it, you should be. It helps your Reanimator decks because it puts a cantrip in black that puts cards in the yard instead of on the bottom of your library, like so many blue cantrips do. It lets you draw, it lets you filter, it's super cheap. Every Dimir deck, every Orzhov deck, every Reanimator deck, they all want this card. Golgari players fight over it. This card never goes around the table. If you want it, you better pick it. It's not coming back. Ransack the Lab is wonderful, and it's at common. Play it in all the cubes. Pauper cubes, peasant cubes, powerful cubes, vintage cubes. Ransack the Lab can be played anywhere. This card is fantastic. You're welcome. 4 cents. You're welcome. You're welcome. Let's move on to Eldraine. Eldraine brought us a great new black 2-drop that's wonderfully affordable, and that is the Order of Midnight. For 1 and a black, you get a creature human knight that's a 2/2 flyer, and it can't block. But it comes with Alter Fate attached. For 1 and a black, at sorcery speed, you can return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And Order of Midnight works in all decks. It works in mid-rangey black decks. It works in aggro black decks. This card has been wonderful. It's that modal nature. If you have to and you're in the black aggro deck, you can cast it on curve and have a 2/2 flyer and not feel that bad about it. And if you draw it later in the game, you can use it to bring your best creature back to your hand and then cast it as a 2/2 flyer. So the modal nature of Eldraine cards, the adventure mechanic, it's been fantastic. Order of Midnight will not disappoint, and the card is 89 cents. 89 cents. Even the fancy foil altered art ones are super cheap. Scoop up a copy of Order of Midnight. This card has been wonderful. I played it a little bit on a lark. I thought it would be okay. It has exceeded my expectations, and we're out of black for under $1 again. Under $1 again. Let's keep going, boys and girls. Let's go to red, and let me introduce you to my favorite red 4-drop, Hellrider. For 2 and double red, you get a creature devil with haste. Whenever a creature you control attacks, Hellrider deals 1 damage to the defending player, and it's a 3/3. This card ends games. You go super wide in the early game with your aggro deck, throwing down 1-drops and 2-drops, or a 1-drop and a 2-drop on turn 3. You're super wide, turn 4, slam Hellrider, turn your board sideways, and your opponent takes 4 or 5 damage before your creatures ever hit. I've had people play this in Cube and not be able to get through on attacks, but turn their board sideways anyway because Hellrider will do the work for you. This is a great curve topper for an aggro deck. It's a solid 4-drop, and it's 36 cents. 36 cents! Oh my goodness, 36 cents! It's fantastic, alright? It's fantastic. Hellrider, scoop one. Now, our second card in red is a oldie but a goodie, and it's actually going to enable a whole nother deck inside your cube, and that's Wildfire. For 4 and double red, you get a sorcery. Each player sacrifices 4 land. Wildfire deals 4 damage to each creature. So this is a board wipe and a land wipe, and the key to playing Wildfire is to make the effect asymmetrical. So while your opponent's sacking 4 lands and you're sacking 4 lands, you should be fine because you have either A, gotten into the artifact deck, so you've got plenty of rocks on the board and you don't mind wiping your lands, or B, you're in a spell land rampy deck, So you're casting cards like Cultivate and Kodama's Reach, which are a little slower, I admit, but you're playing cards like that to ramp into 6 mana well ahead of your opponent, so that when you Wrath with Wildfire, you're at like 7 lands and they're at 4. And even then, that will still be enough that you'll recover fast enough to mollywop your opponent. Wildfire is going to cost us a paltry 50 cents. 50 cents. 86 cents in red, 50 cents you got a brand new deck in your cube. But one of the things your boy Matt preaches is consistency. You need a depth or a density of effects. So I'm going to get you a bonus card here in red and advise you to try Burning of Xingye. It's basically a copy of Wildfire. It's a second copy of our card, which is great for density, and it only costs 82 cents. That's right. 3 cards in red, under $2, and a new deck inside your cube. We're doing it all today, boys and girls. That's right, the Wildfire deck. One other note about the Wildfire deck before we press on, though, and that is that your cube should be on the smaller side, because the larger your cube is, the smaller chance that a drafter can see both of these in a single draft. So if you're in like the 360 to 420 range, see what I did there? If you're in that range of cube, you're probably fine just running 2 Wildfires. Once you hit the 540 range, the deck becomes a lot less consistent. Let's move to green, shall we? Green is a great place to be. I love green cards. Green cards like Wild Growth. For 1 green mana, you can enchant a land. Wild Growth adds a green mana to your mana pool each time the land is tapped for mana. So what Wild Growth does is it ramps you, but it doesn't die to Lightning Bolt. And I can't tell you how important that is. Avacyn's Pilgrim, Landwar Elf, Birds of Paradise, Elvish Mystic, all those green 1-drops have one thing in common. They die to Bolt. Wild Growth does not. It is essentially a hex-proof Landwar Elf. Now I can hear a couple of you in the back going, but Matt, when it gets strip mined, it feels awful. Yeah, it does. But there's only 1 copy of Strip Mine, maybe 2 if you play Wasteland inside the cube. But there's a billion different burn variations. So Wild Growth dodges all the burn spells, and then maybe your opponent has Strip Mine that 1 time out of 100 and it feels bad. Nope. Play Wild Growth. But Matt, it doesn't block. You weren't blocking with your Landwar Elf to begin with. You were going to take that damage, okay? So don't sell me that either. Wild Growth. 21 cents, and it's a new hex-proof Landwar Elf. Wild Growth is wonderful. But if you're not sold on Wild Growth as a new mana dork, let me introduce you to one of my favorite new mana dorks, and she's a 2-drop, and that's the Paradise Druid. For 1 and a green, you get an Elf Druid. Paradise Druid has hexproof as long as it's untapped. Tap it, add 1 mana of any color, and it's a 2/1. Now, if I think about it, someone really smart was just talking about how it was important for mana dorks to beat Bolt. And Paradise Druid does that, which is fantastic. You're guaranteed at least 1 use out of her. And then secondly, you can tap her for a mana of any color, which I love. She mana fixes you, but doesn't just do it for green. She gives you any color. So the card is wildly playable. All the decks want it, and her body's not nothing. She's a 2/1. You know, if you get to swing in and poke your opponent with her, like, 2 damage, that's reasonable. I like her so much better than cards like Lotus Cobra that just die to everything. I know Lotus Cobra has a higher ceiling because sometimes you can play a fetch, crack it, get a land, tap the land, and have all that mana, and it's great. Except for when you don't have a fetch land or a land at all in your hand, and then it just sits there like a snake on a log. The ramp deck needs all the help it can get, and when help can be got for 59 cents, you play the Hexproof Mana Dork. Spend 59 cents, help your ramp deck out, play Wild Growth 2. Fantastic cards. Take a drink every time Matt says fantastic. No, really, don't do that. Stop. That's too much. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the what? What do you mean you want more? I did Wooburg. What do you want? Artifacts? Seriously? Alright, fine. But after artifacts, we're done. Alright, we're done. No more 5 minutes. Let's go. Artifacts. Allow me to present to you Gingerbrute. Now, this card is sneaky good. I playtested it. I really thought it would be nothing, and it's definitely not nothing. For 1 mana, you get a food golem with haste. Pay 1, Gingerbrute can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with haste. Pay 2, tap and sack Gingerbrute. You gain 3 life, and it's a 1/1. Now, I know the card looks innocuous, but The fact that it can't be blocked is actually super spicy, and since you're in the aggro deck, you're the one that has the creatures with haste, so you don't care about that clause. You're just going to pay 1 and make him unblockable. Gingerbrute wears swords and bone splitters and all kinds of armor really well. You strap an equipment on this boy and he's doing work. He's also pretty sneaky good at keeping planeswalkers from ultimating, because you can just slide over to your opponent's side of the board and poke it real quick. Just a little poke, and keep that planeswalker from being able to ultimate and keep it in the killable range. And it has an emergency mode that you can crack him open for 3 life. Now, I'm not advocating that you play him in a vintage cube or anything ridiculous like that, but for 12 cents, you could give him a try in your traditional unpowered cube. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. The guy is pretty playable and all the aggro decks want him, and the multicolored aggro decks really like being able to play him on turn 1 no matter what. But I hear what you're saying, that, alright, he's a 1/1. You want something spicy. You want to see the beef. You want a big, bulky creature to really put your opponent in check. I got you. Let me introduce you to the Ancient Stone Idol. For 10 mana, you get a Flash. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature. It has Trample. Ancient Stone Idol, when it dies, create a 6/12 colorless construct artifact creature token with Trample, and it's a 12/12. Oh my goodness, this card is so much. So there's a lot happening here, so let's break this down. Pay attention to that middle clause. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature. Notice that it doesn't say that it has to be your creatures, and it doesn't say that it has to be your opponent's creatures. So what you can do is be in the control deck, and then when your opponent swings in with 3-4 creatures, you tap 6 or 7, flash this boy down and eat one of their creatures, and now you've got a 12/12 and your opponent is on a serious clock. And if they kill him, you don't care, because he makes a 6/12 construct with Trample that's still bigger than almost everything in your cube. Ancient Stone Idol is so good, you can play him in your own mid-range deck. Swing in with a wide board and then flash him down on your side, and your opponent cries. Because now, even if they cast Wrath of God, you get a 6/12 construct artifact creature token with Trample. Oh my goodness. This guy's going to be your new best friend. He's your new best friend. Go ahead and stick him at the top of the curve in your colorless section. Love me some Ancient Stone Idol. And the card is $1.59. That's right, $1.59. $2 to upgrade your artifact section, and you've got change for a gumball. How sweet is that? There, artifacts, did it, done. And what? Seriously? You want more? You know what? He said please this time, and I respect that. Matt's gonna take you to the multicolored section, but only because you said please. I've got 3 spicy choices here, guaranteed to make the multicolored sections of your cube. Here we go. First up is Discovery. That's right, I said Discovery. I know it says Discovery Dispersal, but we're not really counting Dispersal. You don't cast Dispersal. Dispersal is kind of like a happy accident. Discovery is the end we're playing. For 1 and a hybrid Dimir, you get a Surveil 2 and then draw a card. It's innocuous. It's one of those cards that players sleep on, but the fact of the matter is it's a sweet little cantrip, and Surveil is better than Scry. I enjoy putting cards in my graveyard. The cool thing about Discovery is that you don't have to be in the blue deck to play it. You can be in a Rakdos deck. You could be in a Golgari Reanimator deck. You could be in a Orzhov deck. It doesn't matter, because the card draw and card filtering and throwing flashback spells in the yard feels wonderful. Discovery is great. Now, Dispersal's not nothing, and it does happen sometimes, so maybe we should read it here. Hold on while I turn my head sideways. For 3, a blue, and a black, you get an instant. Each opponent returns a non-land permanent they control with the highest converted mana cost amongst the permanents they control to its owner's hand, and then discards a card. So, there are corner cases where you do cast Dispersal. You cast it and your opponent picks up their biggest thing, whatever it is, and they put it back in their hand. And occasionally, if you time it just right, you can bounce the permanent back to their hand when they don't have a hand, and then they discard it. And then boys and girls, you feel like Don Corleone making them an offer they can't refuse. Did I mention that Discovery Dispersal is 63 cents? I know it doesn't look like a sexy add to your Dimir section, but I promise Discovery Dispersal won't disappoint. Now, let me introduce you to the best Gruul card in Cube. That's right, I said it, the best Gruul card in Cube, and it's in the budget list, and that card is Domri, Anarch of Bolas. For 1 and a red and a green, you get a legendary Planeswalker Domri. Creatures you control get +1/+0. +1, add a red or a green. Creature spells you cast this turn can't be countered. -2, target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. This card is sick. Every Gruul deck wants it. Ramp versions of the deck want it. Go wide versions of the deck want it. Mid-range versions of the deck want it. This is the best card in the Gruul section. Move over, Bloodbraid Elf. Domri's in town. Fight me. This is the best card. Feel free to put your incorrect arguments in the comments below. I am all about Domri, and if that wasn't enough, the card is $1.09. That's right, $1.09. Scoop a Domri today. Card is fantastic. Now, that being said, I promised you one more. This is a little more of a spicy pick. Shout out to the boys at Solely Singleton for getting me to playtest this card. It's been pretty decent. That card is Solar Blaze. For 2 red and a white, you get a sorcery. Each creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. What I've noticed about Solar Blaze is that it's created a Jeskai control deck and made it much more consistent inside my cube. You could play it in a big Boros deck. That just hasn't really happened in my cube yet, but I have started seeing much more consistent Jeskai control decks because they're not fighting over board wipes with the Esper deck. They don't have to try and splash those black board wipes. They can just play Solar Blaze and Supreme Verdict and then the normal white ones. So Solar Blaze has been surprisingly good in my cube. I like it. And the cool thing about playing it in a slow rolly control deck is that your creatures are typically low power, high toughness. And what that means is that Solar Blaze might not wipe your board, it might only wipe your opponent's. I mean, fact of the matter is you're in a control deck and you're probably running a bunch of walkers anyway. But aggressive decks and mid-range decks tend to play creatures that's power is greater than or equal to its toughness. So most of the time Solar Blaze is just a straight board wipe. We've been very happy with it so far. We're going to keep playtesting it. The good news is that even if the card is horrible, it's only 17 cents. I have nothing invested in this card, and it's been a fun, spicy card to kind of playtest. I don't think it makes small Boros sections in small cubes, but if you're at 4 or 5 cards, you might consider playtesting Solar Blaze. Card's pretty decent. It's pretty decent. Now, I'm gonna do you one better. I know I promised you multicolor, but you know what? We're gonna do budget lands too. That's right, budget lands in Cube. And if you want to talk about next to impossible, budget lands are not easy. But let me show you an all-star that maybe you should be playing, and that's Grand Colosseum. Grand Colosseum enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for a colorless mana, or you can tap it and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Grand Colosseum deals 1 damage to you. So what Grand Colosseum is that it's a take on City of Brass. But Grand Colosseum comes in tapped, which is a downside, but it has the upside of being able to tap for colorless mana, which City of Brass does not. Now, I'm not going to tout this as some Cube All-Star or that it's a must-play or a staple or anything like that, but I will make you this promise. You add this card to your cube, it's not going to circle the table. Your drafters are going to want this. Every deck, except for the aggro decks, are going to want to play Grand Colosseum. It fixes their mana. Mid-range and control decks won't mind that downside of it coming in tapped. Aggro is the only deck that's going to care. And maybe the best part about this land is its price is $1.75. That's really sweet for a multicolor fixing land in Cube. Cards like Mana Confluence, City of Brass, they're not that cheap, but Grand Colosseum for $1.75, that's pretty good, even for a card coming from the Commander card pool. Now our second land and our last card, I had to dig a little deep on because solid cube playable budget lands are not really easy to come by. And I got a spicy pick for you. I think you should try out Lonely Sandbar. Now, wait a minute. Tony, sit down. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Matt, I don't want to play a full cycle of these. I'm not asking you to. You don't have to play a full cycle. Just play this one. Here's the thing. The blue deck doesn't mind a tap land in its opening hand, because most of the time the blue deck doesn't have a turn 1 play unless it's like Ponder or Preordain. Most of the time the blue deck plays its fancy tap land and passes. So if Lonely Sandbar's in your opening hand, you just play it tapped and then you pass the turn. If you draw Lonely Sandbar in the late game and don't need it anymore, then you just cycle it away to draw more gas. The blue player can play Lonely Sandbar with 0 downside. If they draw it early, they don't mind, they're a slow deck, they play it tapped. If they draw it late and don't want it, they can cycle it away, which they can't do with a regular island. It won't cost them anything in their mana base either, as they'll just replace a regular island with Lonely Sandbar. And Lonely Sandbar is only 8 cents. I promise you, this card will work out if you include it in your blue sections. Your blue decks are not going to be mad about it. It's going to make them more consistent. That's going to do it for today, Cubers. Don't let Pioneer get you down. Play test some budget cards. These are all really good. Your boy Matt's word is on it. Hope you liked the video. Let me know in the comments below if you like these kind of videos or if there's other content you want to see, and we'll take care of you. Like and subscribe. Follow us on the Twitter @CubeFor2. Do all the things, and as always, and until next time, shuffle up and keep cubing, my friends.